Good morning, friends. We are back with another leader, not a business leader, not a corporate leader, but a leader in several senses. Someone who is a thinker and a doer. You don't get too many of that type. We have in these conversations endeavored to bring to you persons from different fields whose only commonality is that they have succeeded. That success hasn't come easy, but they have striven for it, have succeeded, and in their success stories, not just in what they accomplished, but how they accomplished what they accomplished. There are lessons for all of us. In today's conversation, I have with me a friend, a person who's excelled himself in several fields. Largely in the corporate space, because much of what he does outside of that, he has chosen to keep to himself. Let's see if we can get some of that out of him as we proceed with this conversation. He has an excellent academic record, an excellent record of accomplishments in the business field, and hasn't abandoned through this long journey of several decades a positivism, an optimism, and the ability to look at the bright side, perhaps create the bright side and help us look at it. Let me welcome to this conversation Sanjeev Aga, the former managing director of Idea Cellular, but that's only one of the several feathers in an overcrowded cap. We need to give some label to the product, and therefore I chose that. But there are several other things that he has done before and subsequent. Sanjeev, welcome to the conversation.
Good morning, sir, and thank you for the over-generous introduction.
Okay, let me start with academics. I have not been a great one for academics. In fact, I have records of sorts. The first dropout from the IIT system in India, dropping out of 2 professional courses, dropping out of 2 banks before joining the civil service. So consistency and high academic excellence, at least in my college years, has not been one of the aspects of my life. I did reasonably well at school. But I noticed that you went to some of the best institutions in this country. So what I like the most, and I read this in an interview of yours, is that the best years of your life were the first 2 years in the Northeast where your father was posted and you didn't have to go to school. Maybe you studied more because you didn't go to school.
Well, that's you must have picked up something from the archives, but that's actually true. When I was 8 and 9 years old, my father was posted outside Jorhat in Assam. He was a doctor in the army and in the Air Force actually, and there was really no school. So my mother used to teach me about half an hour of 45 minutes of arithmetic in the morning, and my father would teach me half an hour of English when he came back from work in the afternoon. And they were not, so the rest of the day was, I used to play everything. We used to start with cross-country running, football, cricket, and then in the officers' mess, I'd watch squash. And on the sides of the badminton court, I would knock around the shuttlecock. So those were great days. But I think the reason I made that remark was that when you're completely alone, I don't know from where you pick up certain interests. So I had a precocious interest, for example, when I was just 7 years old and my father didn't own a transistor or a radio, shortwave radio. I had a precocious interest in test match cricket. I remember when 1960, I think Richie Benaud's team, I think that was Richie Benaud, came to India. I remember the test matches in England in 1959. I remember all the Wimbledon winners from the 50s. I don't know the current lot, but I knew it in the 50s and 60s. So, that's what I meant. You develop curiosities and you develop also angularities. So there are pluses and minuses. But I think not going to school for a couple of years is an opportunity not to get regimented. And that has some value.
No, I think it has huge value. Curiosity, the power of observation, of taking in what you think is right, ignoring what you think is possibly not right. Uh, I believe that is huge education. Somebody said that a college is where you prevent yourself from getting educated. So, much in line with that, I think what you do on your own, and there's nothing like learning at home, especially from parents who are willing to take the time and make the effort to part with whatever knowledge they have. That is huge, and I think must have benefited. But you went to Cynthia School, where, of course, they recognized you later as an old boy of eminence. Then you went to St. Stephen's, and then IIM Kolkata. One question that I had was that most people who go to St. Stephen's take a shot at the civil services. And I've heard it said as I was growing up in the civil services with so many Stephanians around. Of course, I've never been inside Stephens in any capacity. I don't know what it's like inside. But people used to say you are never far from the Red Star or whatever, if memory serves me right. How come you never took a shot at the civil services?
Sir, it may sound a little strange, but during my later school years, my college years, my IIM years, and the first 10 to 15 years of my working life, looking back, I think I never went beyond third gear. I never applied myself for any length of time in totality. And I did enough to get by. You said I had a very good academic record. I did get by reasonably enough, but I never threatened, toppers because I just wasn't interested in applying myself. It changed by the time I became 35, and I'll come to that later if you ask me. But I never applied myself. And so when I was in college, although I soaked in, I was doing physics, and I soaked in from my, fellows and residents, things about economics and philosophy and English and, so on, other courses, history particularly. But I never was sure that I had it in me to be able to compete and get into the administrative service. Otherwise, I would have. I could not risk, being 5 years and then find that I'm not getting into the service and the other options are not very attractive. So the moment I saw an option to leave physics and get into MBA, which attracted me then, I took the chance. I won't say I've regretted it, but if I were to put myself back into 1968, 69, and if I had reckoned that I have a good chance, which I think I had, but I didn't realize it then.
It was interesting, instead of getting into the drab world of administration, which is where you would have ended up if you taken the civil service examinations, you got into the colorful world of paints. You worked in 2 paint companies, I noticed. So I was thinking of that ad, whenever you see color, think of us. I said, whenever you see paint, think of Sanjeev Aga. Is it? How come 2 paint companies?
So the first paint company was the job I applied from Institute of Management campus, Calcutta, and I was selected. And at that time, Asian Paints was not the legend it has become today. It was seen as an attractive company because some of our predecessors in the earlier years were given positions of responsibility. But it was not one of those, MNC companies with a lot of appeal in other senses. So that's how I went into Asian Paints, and it is, of course, a lot of people ask me now that how did it develop this competitive advantage? How has it become such a machine in terms of throwing out predictable, solid results year after year, decade after decade? And I saw that for 9 years. I contributed not that much, but I saw it. So because it was happening around me, I must have contributed a little bit. But in retrospect, you can see the power in the late 1960s and early 1970s. Mr. C.H. Choksi people ascribe a lot of attributes to him. But I think one of the attributes was his blind faith in youth and the quality of the mind. And he could, he could gamble on that, and he would win. So I think that's what it was. It was work in progress. I saw the work in progress, and only now we realize that they were doing some really different things. My second stint was in Jensen and Nicholson. That, to be honest, I had gone to Nigeria after Asian Paints to make a little money, but I didn't like Nigeria. I found it a bit sterile. And from there, this is still 1980, I think it was 83 end. And I went for the security of taking a job when I was still in Nigeria. So I sort of got an offer from Jensen and Nicholson, and I spent 4 years there. 4 good years in Calcutta. The company, unfortunately, has not done well. It is hardly known of now. And after that, I shifted to Bombay. When I shifted to Bombay, I thought it would be another posting. But the last decades, I've become a Bombayite, a Mumbaiker.
Mumbaiker. That's interesting. You also became the chief executive of Mattel Toys. And I always look at toy companies and wonder how the chief executive gets user inputs. At the end of the day, kids are the guys that use toys. So how do you figure out what toys people would like and what they wouldn't like?
As a confession, I did not personally go around observing children. But I had 2 daughters who were, and I think more than sitting and observing, you should have the ability to put yourself into the shoes of the other child, of the other person. Whether it is someone from the trade or it is a consumer, it is an intuitive thing which is true across professions. And I think to some extent I had that ability to, get out of my own skin and to be someone else. I'll just give you an example of this, that, we were having a lot of problems in those days, more with Leo toys than Mattel toys, but Leo was the Indian brand, but with both, of making, having a lot of returns, defective toys and so on. And I was not a person who had been in manufacturing or quality control or Six Sigma and all that. But when I went to met my team at that time, our manufacturing unit was in Nagpur. And this was a crisis. So, and I had these people, most of them were engineers, senior to me in age. And it just came out of it just came out from the heart. I said, just imagine that it was your daughter or your son. And this is still India of the late 1980s, 1990 actually. It was still middle class families. For a kid to get a toy did not happen every second day. And if you bring home a toy and if it is not working, it shatters the world of that little boy and little girl. So this was from the heart. And I don't know, because I never got feedback, but after that things changed. And I think more than lessons of manufacturing technology, it was this appeal to the emotion, which I think got everyone going. And very methodically, month after month, we chipped away and more or less sorted out this quality problem. So this relates to really whether you do it through a focus group or you do it intuitively, but these 2 approaches converge.
Okay. And then, of course, you went into the Aditya Birla Group, where you led several businesses, a highlight of which was leading a telecom company in a fiercely competitive situation and holding your own in a sense. But I don't want to get into the telecom sector's journey in India or the adventures associated with that. But what I want you to share is the name idea. How did that come about? Because I believe, and I'm a very keen observer of advertising, and I think what an idea surgery is something that I think people remember for decades, no matter what happens to the company, what an idea surgery, and the fact that you didn't choose the elder Bachchan, you chose the younger Bachchan, because, in advertising, overexposure leads to non-identification with products. So too many of them you can't. I thought he fitted that role very well. How did idea come about? How did the idea of idea come about?
So that was I would say it's a combination of a stroke of luck and something going on and brewing at the back of the mind incessantly. Both things come together. So at that time, we were actually a company called Birla Tata AT&T.
Yes, I
And
know.
in our
Was it
different,
abbreviated formally as Batata?
no, it was
No, it was not. Okay.
popularly, but not formally.
I know my son was working on that as a young lawyer at some time. And I thought I heard conversations around Batata. Anyway.
So we had to get out of that because in different circles we had different brand names. And one of the boundary conditions was that there is no point having a company name which is associated with a shareholder because shareholders change. And therefore, we wanted the company name and the brand name both to belong to the company. One of my lessons long back, I'll try not to be very long-winded because I can go on, but one of my lessons from my VIP days was that it helps to have in consumer durables and such like products where the company name and the brand name are the same, whether you have companies like Philips or Sony. I found that a pattern, and it may not be so in consumer non-durables, but in durables, it helps if the company and the brand name is the same. So that was another boundary condition. We were trying to capture the spirit of the sector and trying to capture it in a manner that the benefit of that comes uniquely to your company. So the spirit of the sector was innovation, but innovation is a weak word for the bigness of the thought. I was very influenced in those days by a author called The Ascent of Man, Jacob Bronowski, who had actually directed this serial for the BBC, I think in the 1960s. And this is a take on the descent of man from Charles Darwin. Whereas he called it the ascent of man, how humankind has gone from one big idea to another big idea. And so from there, this thought came to me that, why not? I was sitting at home, I remember in my flat in Mumbai. And one evening it came to me that, all this innovation and blah, 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 it boils down to idea, which is a very unique human, the ability to be abstract, to make abstractions, to make models. And I thought the simple word idea, which by the way is one of the first 500 words in any vernacular language, whether Tamil or Assamese or Bengali, you will find idea is both in a local language and it's an English word. It is as big or sublime as you can make it. It can be as petty as you make it. So that was the thought. And we were pleasantly surprised that it was not trademarked. But the reason we still introduced the exclamation to the I was we didn't want to just copy a dictionary word. We wanted to have some difference so that it cannot be trademarked. And there is a longer story around how the exclamation came instead of the inverted I. It started with an inverted I, which I will not speak about in this conversation. I'll speak to you when I'm alone with you.
But advertising was something that ideating and then advertising is something I think which somewhere must be very close to what you like to do, what you observe. Because Pidilite, again, where you are on the board now, come out with some excellent ads of Fevicol, for example.
Yes, sir. I have not been involved except as a board member in admiring them. And in fact, Pidilite is what most people, not you, what most people would consider a company with products which are incapable of being branded, because they're not salient products. They are not life and death. They are not personal products. These are typically you go to a store and pick it up. And therefore, the ability to make a product and create a memorable brand around it, which gives you, is a huge achievement, which Pidilite have done and maintained. And they and their ad agency, but I would say more the company, because the company has to be ahead of its time to give a free rein to the advertising agency and to bring out the best in there.
No, I loved quite a few of those ads. And now, of course, one of the hats that you wear is as an advisor to a private equity firm. So my first question, at one level, very naive, is are there sector-specific attributes in leadership that you notice? Leaders in the manufacturing sector function in a certain way. Leaders, let's say, in the IT sector, with which you're very closely associated again as a board member, function a certain way. Leaders in the private equity space and in your portfolio companies function a certain way. I categorize them broadly as emperors or empowerers. Is there a change that you notice sectorally?
The way I would put it, for example, I joined telecom as a CEO. I never understood the technology or even the IT processes or the service delivery processes or even the accounting, because telecom is a very, very complex and very fast moving arguably someone who had that advantage might have done better than me, but I don't think I did too badly. And I think, so I'm being a little personal here, but in general, you can't be scared of the sector. You may not be an engineer, but you can't be scared of manufacturing. You can't be scared of design. You can't be scared of IT. And you must have enough of a academic background. In my case, I think even though I didn't enjoy physics too much when I was studying it as a graduate student, nevertheless, it gave me confidence that, nothing in life is rocket science. And so I think if you have that basic confidence and if you know, and once again, I mean, it's an interesting question you asked. Let me just put it this way, that when I was heading furniture or toys, I understood 60% of almost every function, from procurement to collection, or 70%. But when I was in telecom, I would sometimes open up a conference room and I would find 20 young boys and girls, none of whom I recognized because it was a large company, animatedly doing something on the blackboard, which I don't understand. And I could either feel insecure about it or feel a compelling need to leave my job and try and understand what is going on. Or I could feel so good about it that if young men and women are applying their mind animatedly, then the company is bound to do well. So I think it's a combination of, you must have some basic familiarity, but after that, particularly the larger the organization, you cannot know everything. And in fact, I once, since you asked me this, Mr. Damodaran, I once asked a friend of mine who was from your service, from St. Stephen's, who was working with Mr. Brajesh Mishra, the late Brajesh Mishra. And I asked him that how the hell would Mr. Vajpayee, who's the Prime Minister, understand, what is telecom, what is nuclear deal, and what is this, what is that. He's just written poetry all his life when he was not giving speeches. But he told me he's got a great, and I thought he would agree with me, but he said he's got a great assessment of a situation and a great assessment of people. And I now realize that when you're in a position, the bigger the position, half knowledge is good, but half knowledge can also be dangerous. There is no problem if you don't know everything.
That is very well put. Now, my colleagues here won't forgive me if I don't ask a question on governance, since we are a governance company. So tell me, you've been very, very close to this conversation about the institution of independent directors. Is it useful? Is it useless? Is the truth somewhere in between? Is the problem with the institution of IDs? Is the problem with individual IDs that do not function in independent fashion? What is your take on all of this?
So although I'm an independent director, I've had the opportunity of observing you and learning from you in some of the common boards. I would tend to think that this animal of independent directors in its present avatar will not live more than 20 years. I think some change will come. And the reason is that there are many, I will give you the weak points and then what I think where it is working very well. Theoretically, an independent director is supposed to, so to say, manage the company, run the company. But that is the normative description. Actually, the independent directors are supposed to be backroom boys who provide support, who are like a sounding board, and step in only when there is something egregious happening. The other thing is that independent directors are not even equipped. Let's say they have to take on there's no hierarchy, there is no batting order, there is no. So these, I think, are the weaknesses. And of course, the point which we have often discussed in the seminars which you have done is that the appointment of independent directors, are they truly independent, which is a subject in which in many ways no one knows more than you do in India. But on the other hand, I have seen companies, Pidilite is one of them, and there are others, even I would say Club Mahindra is one of them, where they really start by appointing independent directors to see people who can help the company. And help the company not in terms of, but in terms of making the company think, challenging the company, bringing independence. And so there I find the model is working very well. It is working to the advantage of both governance and the company and the small shareholder. It works to everyone's advantage. But it's a delicate plant. It's a delicate creature. And if conditions are not right, then it becomes a little ritualistic.
You and I sit on audit committees without ever having been auditors or accountants or things of that kind. And the expectations of audit committees are huge. When something goes wrong, whether it is in India or outside of India, people ask, what was the audit committee? In fact, I have said several times that if you drop somebody from Mars and he looked at the corporate scene, he would think that in India, audit committees run companies along with independent directors. The management has no role really, given the kind of expectations heaped on audit committees, responsibilities, etc. What is your experience? Is the audit committee, let's say, an instrument that cannot deliver all of what is expected of it?
Sir, I have probably known maybe 10 boards, some in which I sit as an independent director, but I've also known boards when I was on the management side. Among the better companies in India, and if the selection of independent directors is thoughtfully done and not done just to get a convenient person, then I would say the audit committee plays a salutary role. It may not be able to meet the expectations of the establishment, which are impossible to meet. But by and large, it is a good oversight committee. It provides perspective. And if there are the right people, then the audit committee is an instrument for improving the governance of the company. A good audit committee, I think, would also not restrict itself just to the papers which are put before it. But a good audit committee would also keep its eyes and ears open. And if there is something which it is not comfortable with, it should suo moto be able to raise that. So I've seen those kinds of audit committees. You have been on some of those audit committees. I think they function very well. It could be that some freak incident may happen and someone will say, what were you doing? But these are not people I respect so much. I mean, I'm looking at the substantive value add rather than the, ticking the boxes. But I would say that such kind of audit committees in public listed companies in India would not be more than 10-20% of the total universe of listed companies. So I don't know how to answer your company. Do I look at the worst performer or the best performer? But I think where things are good, they function well.
Good. Let's change to something entirely different. I read somewhere that retirement could give Sanjeev Aga more time to watch sports on TV and to read and to write. Now, I want to quarrel with the word retirement. I don't know whether in this conversation that you had with somebody 12 years ago, you use the word or he used the word, because I don't see you as a retirement type. You might have superannuated because that's a calendar item. It's derived from date of birth, but you never ever retire. Continue to do something, keep busy. How much time are you able to devote to all of these, watching sports? I suppose you don't run the cross country any longer, though. Must have given you a lot of experience. Running cross country is a great experience for running businesses, I think, because you run into all manner of obstacles. The surface is uneven in some sense. But what sports do you watch? What are you reading?
I watch. I'm sure it is the same with you because of the abundance of events. There is not the same, but certainly I watch cricket. I particularly enjoy watching competitive test match cricket. I enjoy watching good quality tennis. Once in a while, badminton, hockey. Hockey was my favorite sport when I was in school, and but you don't have a lot of that. So I enjoy all that, and that's about sport. I haven't been running after after I was a kid, and in fact nowadays even when I'm walking with a mask around the face, it's not pleasant in the muggy weather of Mumbai. It may be more bracing in other parts.
So you must have seen the cricket match where bowlers of Indian origin took 30 odd wickets in a test match.
Yes,
Normally, the maximum you can take is 20 if you're playing for one side, but all the wickets, yes.
I think he took the first 12, 13 wickets before.
No, I think on both sides. On our side, all 20 were taken by Indian bowlers. And on the New Zealand side, I think all the wickets were taken by bowlers of Indian origin anyway. So,
absolutely.
Phenomenal. So you have the time and the patience for a 5-day test match. And you are not a T20 fan, I imagine.
T20, I do switch in because it's in the evening. You may have a small drink by your side. You've just had a bath, but I won't say that I find it dripping. It's not as if I'm going to, think that, oh, today is the match, so I've got to be at home. It isn't that way with me.
I think it is 5-day test matches that teach you what it takes to be a corporate leader, I imagine. What about reading?
So I have a pathological condition that I can't sleep at night until I read. So
a good condition. I'm sure doctors will prescribe it for more people.
So I do read some book or the other for about an hour every night before I nod off. During the day, for some reason nowadays, particularly, I get distracted because there is the constant ping of the WhatsApp. And then once it pings, I can't resist looking at it. So, but during the day, I have friends and we send each other tons of articles which they find of interest. So it may not be solid reading of a book, but I would go through a fair amount of pieces from around the world on different subjects, which my friends might send to me.
My last question, do you think the future will be defined by social media, cryptocurrency or crypto assets, and accompanying intolerance, impatience, and whatever else are the positive youthful qualities that we notice around us?
Are you asking me if what we've seen in the last 10 years, let us say the impulses in our country, whether they are going to be durable. Is that broadly your question, sir?
That's right, yes.
I will give you an honest answer. I don't know the answer. I've actually discussed this. And I have seen, for example, mobilization in my lifetime, your lifetime, mobilization around identity, religious identity. It could be of any religion. Never been so high in my lifetime. And so I was tending to think that this might become our natural state. I don't like it, but if that is so, I need to recognize it. And then I met someone who challenged me and said that, 90 years ago, in a much poorer country with no social media, in fact, no media, a gentleman called Mohandas Gandhi was able to submerge identity from the great-grandparents or grandparents of today's generation. So is this the yin and yang of history? Or is this a one-way direction? I came out, with a yes/no answer. I don't have a prophecy to make.
Let me ask you one last question, an unfair question, to which the answer is not known as yet, but all of India seems to be battling with this. Who will open for India in the South African tests?
This is not the fearsome South African team of 20 years ago when Tendulkar and Dravid went in green tops and Alan Dollenwood and company were shooting. But South Africa is always hard. I don't know. This is, you have Mayank Agarwal who's done well here, but that is in Mumbai. You've got Shubman Gill, you've got KL Rahul, who looks of the three the most organized because he lasted longer on the difficult pitches in England last summer. So, and these are at least three. Of course, you have Rohit Sharma, who has transitioned into an opener. It's a question. I think we might see some churn around these positions. I don't know if they've got tour matches, but if not, these positions will be up for grab. I don't know what your view is, sir.
So my view is, I think, nearly corresponding with what you said, that will be the tried and tested types, I think, that will get the nod, the Rohit Sharmas and the KL Rahuls. The others must wait for their time to come. On that note, let me thank you for a freewheeling, wide-ranging conversation that hopefully gets some people who've been a part of this conversation a peep into the mind of Sanjeev Aga. What makes Sanjeev Aga? Thank you, Sanjeev. It's been, as always, a pleasure and a privilege chatting.
Thank you, sir. My privilege, my pleasure.